in style, New York, green living by design. She lives with her husband Anil Nair in New York and Miami Beach. Lucky the story she wrote on her husband's Scotch career in her first biographical memoir. We are also lucky to have had her uh, do the book presentation of that book in a short time back only, about maybe in last couple of months or so time. Welcome, Jean. I'll give a little bit. I'm shortening because of time constraints. Introduction. I'm going to introduce Madhu Wangu to Madhu Wangu to the audience and here. She's an award-winning author and the founder of Mindful Writers Group and Retreats. She has a doctorate in phenomenology of religion from the University of Pittsburgh and postdoctorate fellowship from Harvard University. For 15 years, she has taught Hindu and Buddhist art history at the University of Pittsburgh, Rhode Island College, and Wheaton College. She joined Penn Writers Organization in 2006 and served as a board member from 2007 to 2012. In 2020, she won Penn Writers Meritorious Award for being a valuable asset to the writing and publishing world. Dr. Wangu also served in several other boards. I'm not going to go into the detail of that. She has also developed a technique. She calls it writing meditation methods because of her involvement in meditation and in writing. She has written several books on Hindu and Buddhist goddesses. Quote some of them: Images of Indian Goddesses, Myths, Meanings, and Models. Second one, A Goddess is Born, Spark Publishers. There are books for young adults on both on Hinduism and Buddhism. She also writes fiction, including Chance Meetings, stories about cross-culture karmic collisions, and comparison. 2 novels, The Immigrant Wife, Her Spiritual Journey, and The Last Sati. She's also in the process of writing a few more books, and so I'm not going to go into them. Today we're going to discuss one of these books, The Immigrant's Wife. But I had to add a couple of lines to this, that at a personal level, I'm somewhat emotional being here. I know Madhu, we were children together, we grew up together, and our families have been close to, I was calculating after talking to her, maybe about 120 to 130 years from my grandfather's young time. In early years, I knew her as an artist, and I saw her first solo art presentation in Pittsburgh here, but I don't know whether she remembers it. But I went with her, and my wife Tina was there with her. I don't remember the date exactly, but it was in the 70s. But her development into an academician, particularly in the field she is in, and then a writer, is really joyful to me. So I won't take any more time now, but welcome, Madhu.
Oh, you're making me cry. I was going to be very formal and say Dr. Mattu and not let people know that you knew me. But thank you so much. You touched my heart. Thank you.
Jane, yeah, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very thrilled to speak to you today, Madhu, about your wonderful book, The Immigrant's Wife. I just loved it. And I was very curious to talk a little bit more about your background as an academic and a historian in Indian art and religions. And I was hoping to start by finding out why you decided to write fiction, given your academic background.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. You know, academia is the stuff of the mind, very precise, very specialized, and very intellectual. And when I wanted to write things of the heart, I was unable to do that, to combine my research on artworks, of Hindu and Buddhist images, and then also think about things of the things I pondered over the predicament of human life, human existence, or to combine more than one discipline. I wanted to bring in religion, art, philosophy, aesthetics, and so on, and wondering about nature, awe of our relationship with things around us. And none of that I could do in my academic books, but I could do that in fiction very freely. That was one of the reasons, several other reasons, but main reason was that.
All right. Well, so scholarly writing is totally different than fiction, and there are different skills involved, and it's a completely different style of writing. Can you talk a little bit about the process of making the switch from nonfiction scholarly writing to fiction? What were the challenges for you?
Oh, it was one of the hardest things I have done, even harder than switching from painting to writing. I had no idea how to write a story, the beginning, middle, and end, how to write dialogue or scenes or backstories, backflash or flashbacks or a narrative. So it was something I had to learn. I attended classes, I attended workshops, joined writers' groups and critique groups, and eventually I was able to, writing every single day and writing in my journaling, pouring my heart out in my journal without any inhibition, because that was for my eyes only. That helped me to write fiction.
Okay. Well, so before we get into talking about The Immigrant Wife, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the organization you founded called Mindful Writers Groups. When did you start that, and what is it about?
Okay, so for decades, I was meditating, journaling, walking in nature, and so on every single day, and had never combined these three disciplines together of meditation and journaling and walking. Meditation taught me self-awareness. Journaling and meditation together brought me closer to my inner self, my true self. The mask kept falling off, and it also increased my focus and productivity. So when I joined Pen Writers, which is a national organization, I thought, why not share this experience with other writers? So I invited some writers and we started a group, and it was a wonderful experience because writing as a group together, there was a certain kind of power, certain kind of energy which circulated in the room, and a creative flow opened up, and we started writing together for 1 hour, and it extended to 3-4 hours. And then we had these retreats, weekend retreats, and some of them were 5 days retreats. So now we have 3 in-person retreats, not these days because of COVID, but then we have not retreats, I mean weekly group meetings. We have 3 weekly group meetings, we have retreats, and we have one very popular now, online mindful writers group. We have about more than 500 members in that. And we do meditation, we do journaling, and we write. And the meditation we use are all recorded as CDs, written and narrated by me.
Okay. And so are those available?
Yes, on my website, yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, that is fascinating. How thrilling. I think I want to join the group.
Yes, please do. We'd love to have you.
So about the book, it's always easiest to write about what you know. And it's been said that art imitates life. And since the protagonist of your book, Shanti, is an artist with a deep connection to Hinduism, and the book starts in the 1950s, she seems to have a lot in common with you. Can you elaborate on why you chose to create a central character with these interests and in this time frame, and how does Shanti's journey reflect your own?
Lots and lots of things I crave for, or I do, or I want to express. Those are I have included, woven those in Shanti's character dramatically and intensely, with lots of conflicts. But the story is not mine. Thankfully, it is story of a woman I met on a funeral. Went to attend in Toronto, and I met this girl, a quiet young girl, and I found out as we conversed that she was also an artist. And she said, I said, did you bring some paintings from India? She said, yes. And we were in the same building, so she took me to her apartment. She lived in the same building where we had gone to visit friends. And she had painted beautiful works. And I asked her, so what is your latest work? She said, I haven't painted since I got married because my husband wouldn't let me paint. So that came as a jolt to me. I was really shocked, and she gave me certain details which I wove into this book. But really, everything else is mine, because I myself am very curious, like Shanti is when she's young. I was rebellious, and I am contemplative, and I'm very much interested in this whole. My father used to say, you should try to learn till the day of you are on your deathbed. So that is inbuilt in me. I want to learn and more and more and more, and read and learn from the wisdom books, and also what did I want to say? Oh, yes, they cultivate this goodness. Everybody talks, all these wisdom teachings talk about being good, being kind, being generous, being grateful, thankful to what you have. And I do really take these things very seriously in my life. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to weave into Shanti's nature, so that my readers could connect with these things. Yeah. And I myself was transformed with the world travel, the way I showed Shanti. Oh. Shanti transforms.
Okay, well, those are good messages, and there are quite a few themes related to Indian culture that are relevant to the mid to late 20th century and 21st century, and these are such things as the changing role of women in society, and the caste system, and social biases with respect to religious background and spirituality itself. With all these different strands, were there challenges in exploring these themes and weaving them together? Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yes. Yes, it was I had already studied a lot. I had done a lot of research, a lot of reading on these themes, but they were intellectual. They were in my head. I had never really thought about them seriously. When I looked at all these beautiful masterpieces, the sculptures of images of gods and goddesses or depiction of mythology, they were out there. I had nothing to do with them. I was not and still am not a very religious person. So I thought I had nothing to do with it. And then I realized by the time I ended writing my doctoral dissertation that these were not just some images. These were attributes and the qualities and the personality as we come across, or our own attributes, the negative and our shadow within us. The beneficent qualities we have, the malevolent qualities we have, they were all reflection of that. So I was internalizing them. This is the second reason why I wanted to write fiction, because I wanted to translate all these abstract concepts into real characters. So these themes, that was the challenge. When I changed from my head, I brought these down to my heart, and then I wove all these qualities into my characters, which I created. So to answer your question, yes, it was challenging, but I had the intellectual knowledge. But how to reflect those, how to weave those into actual fictional characters? How did my this information, the knowledge I had, I wanted to weave in the fictional dream I had created.
You did a marvelous job. There's
Thank you.
a lot of, hidden dimension to almost all of the characters. And there were also some really wonderful conversations between Shanti and her family members and her husband, Satyavan, and other people. Can you talk a little bit about the process of creating dialogues in this book? I mean, for me as a journalist, I quote people and I quote what they say or a little bit of a dialogue, but I don't create it out of my head. And I imagine with your scholarly writing, you're quoting people, but a dialogue is something different. Can you talk a little bit about, was it a difficult thing for you to create the dialogues?
Yes, very difficult. But I think dialogue naturally came to me. I come from a large family. I am the 9th child, and our family talked a lot. We talked about different things, different topics very openly. So it was already in my head. But then I also attended classes and learned what dialogue meant in fiction writing. And also when I write, I just write and then I read it aloud and it feels stilted. So I rewrite and then I revise and read it again and rewrite. And also when I'm reading fiction and I find dialogue, some dialogue really very impressive, I pay attention to that and learn from that as well.
I see. Yeah. Well, it's very interesting that you read it aloud. I think that it starts to come alive when the word...
Because it needs to be heard. When we are speaking, we hear each other. We don't look at words. Yeah. So when you're writing, it's very important to bring life to a conversation that you hear it.
Yeah, there was some wonderful dialogue in the story. So talk to us a little bit about the character development of both Shanti and her husband, Satyavan. As a young woman, a college-age young woman, she was a free spirit with a willingness to break from norms, but she wasn't a defiant nonconformist or a prima donna. She seemed to enjoy being part of a group and relished her connections with her family. Yet, after she got married, she started to become more traditional and vulnerable as her marriage progressed. And then Satyavan seemed to be open to Shanti's intellect and her strength, and when they were courting, and it seemed as though she had found a perfect match in him. But then he started to become quite chauvinistic after they married. And my husband, who's Indian, told me that Satyavan means one with truth. Yet Satyavan carries a secret that shaped his relationship with Shanti. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about developing their characters and how they evolved.
Shanti's art in her character art is internal mostly in this whole book. Although she is very friendly and loving with her in Kashmir, with her mother and sister, but she is a free spirit as compared to them. And then when she is at college in Delhi, then also she is learning, but also very friendly. Mostly, and so that is also true. Her interactions in United States with the friends she forms is very friendly. But what happens is to answer your second question, when she comes to United States, she is confined to a house. The space is shrinks. Her space shrinks, and she's confined to her home and her family. So she focuses on that, and then it's just something comfortable. So she cannot do much about it. Even if she has a free spirit, she has to learn about new culture, settle there, and find out who she is. And but once she comes in contact with other American women, she feels encouraged. They shape her.
Yeah, and I would like to just talk a little bit about Satyavan. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's okay.
he seemed to sort of squelch her spirit and, kind of put a damper on her dreams or minimize them. And so he went from being sort of a magnanimous figure to someone who was quite controlling, and it seemed like he turned into a different person in a way, and not the one that I think, he wasn't someone that she was expecting to be spending her life with, and yet she carried on. And so can you talk a little bit about him and his trajectory?
Yes, certainly.
Shifted gears.
Yes. Satya, first of all, it happens, not with everyone, but once your dating time is over, men tend to change, and as do women in different ways. The second reason was because he was carrying this secret within him. He was afraid, he wasn't sure if she'll stay with him. Mm-hmm. So he was afraid she might leave him, which becomes really worse when their children leave home and she decides to go around the world.
That was a pretty just. One of the things that struck me as sort of a literary device were some of the dream sequences that you included. They were just sort of woven in various places throughout. And I was really quite intrigued by them. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on dreams as an element that moved the plot forward.
I use dreams and symbols and metaphors in my poetry and in my paintings quite often because it's a very powerful literary tool. So there are certain deep thoughts, profundity, and certain predicaments we have, and certain subtle emotions we want to convey. It's not possible to convey them in mere words. So we need a strength and power of metaphors and dreams and symbols to convey to our readers what is happening inside the heart of this character. So at places where I couldn't just say them through words, I had to use dreams and places, symbols and metaphors.
You can plumb some depths with these metaphors that you just can't really describe as well. Just explaining a scene in standard terms. And I thought that there were a couple of chapters just dedicated to Satyavan, where all of a sudden, most of it is about Shanti, and then all of a sudden, whoa, I get a little insight into Satyavan now, more than what's, on the surface. And it allowed me as a reader to connect with him and sympathize with him, even though he wasn't very sympathetic at certain points in the book. Another question I had, in many ways, Shanti's experience feels almost like a period piece relative to the freedom of women reflected in more contemporary stories, like the Netflix series 4 More Shots. I don't know if you've ever seen that series, but there are some pretty free-spirited women there in Mumbai. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you believe Shanti's story compares to what young women in India are experiencing today.
The time period in which this novel is set, at that time, the literacy rate of women was like 40%, and now it is 80%. That's really good. But as you know, Jean, that education and literary rate, the better literacy rate and higher education does not matter too much in the way a culture thinks. The worldview of a culture changes very slowly. So even when I go often to India, the worldview remains, the women continue to live under the domination of men. That hasn't changed much. The country still suffers from class, caste, religious discrimination. Um, the social norms haven't changed much. That's why I wrote my book, The Last Sati, in which lots of rituals I discuss and how men look at women, treat them. And I'm not talking about all men and all women, not the ones who have really become liberated and open-minded. I have not watched the show you are mentioning, but I'm thinking that this kind of show is a fantasy for entertainment. It will stay in the box in TV. It won't jump out and become real, because if it does, it will be definitely suppressed and restricted. So there are many shows which maybe men fantasize. They are made by men. And maybe, I don't know, women enjoy, or maybe they want to do kind of things these women are doing, but it won't become a popular, like serials they have in India, serials in different episodes. There are family episodes, mother-in-law, father-in-law, daughters, sons, and so on and so forth. Those are popular ones.
Right. Yeah, this is it's a series, and I'm not sure how many episodes there are, but it's a few of our friends have told us about it. So we looked at it and we just thought, wow, that's a different world. I've been visiting India for almost 25 years now with my husband, and I've seen it change a lot over the course of that time. But it still feels like India, and you can see that there are a lot of traditional values that are not going away. They're gonna stay.
I just want to say this: I'm all for traditional values. I love traditions, but when it interferes with an individual's freedom, that's what I want to tell my readers through Shanti's character. Because there are lots of, as you read the book, so there are so many other female characters in the book who are not as lucky as she is.
Right. Yeah.
I might interject here. I'm afraid to interject between two women talking.
No, you're welcome to say anything.
But there has been too much emphasis placed on individualism here. And it's coming back in India also. But sometimes you have to give up a little bit for family's sake, and you have to give up a little bit of family for community's sake, a little bit of community for state's sake, a little bit of state for nation's sake. Because that's how we make social contracts how to live in the life. We want to improve them. No, there should be no suppression. But I think there is some value to that. Giving up a little individualism that India tells you to do. There are a lot of problems there. But at the same time, I think we have to balance these roles. It's unfortunate, but since we are living together, man, woman, in one area, if we were on a mountaintop or on an island alone, nothing matters. No rules matter. You can do whatever you want to. Wow. But in a society where somebody builds your road, somebody brings food, somebody does this thing. We have to evolve, but we have to understand. And often these men are trapped in that old 1,000 years of legacy. If you go before that in Kashmir, where your protagonist is from, you look at Queen Didda or Kota Rani or these powerful women, and Kashmir, the ideal, religious ideal, we all belong to Shakti. they're all only, the temples are only for deities, female deities, whether it is Ragna or Sharda or Zala or Jeshta. There's no male god temple there. We belong to one of these deities. So it changed and I see in in Shanti lot of that character. She got stuck in something because we both have gone through this process to come from Kashmir to Delhi, from Delhi to America. We had to change too many things on our way. Right? But these problems. Go ahead.
Oh, well, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was just wanting to note that the cross-cultural aspect of Shanti's journey is part of her transformation. And you were mentioning earlier, Madhu, that the relationships that she developed with her American friends were really the ones that allowed her to blossom and evolve and gave her the wings to find her inner strength. And I think that she tried very hard to balance and play her role successfully in the family relationship. But I think she needed to find herself, and in doing so, it enabled Satyavan to find himself too, to a certain degree. And so the transformative aspect, the cross-cultural aspect, allowed her to see herself in a new light. Would you say that, or do you think it was something that helped her to step into a new way of thinking?
Yeah, first I want to say that I definitely wanted to bring this element of Shanti having lots of good friends when she landed in Pittsburgh, because it was my personal homage to women who became my friends, and they really, American women who became my friends and were really, really very supportive and encouraging and asked me to join this art group and that art group. So that is my, that's true. That is a good observation you had about her, what happened to her in Pittsburgh. But early on, remember, she was very much interested in the books of Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, and she had actually, and she tells this quote she had memorized, that you can, what is it? It's a glorious thing to paint a picture or carve a statue and thus make few objects beautiful, but far more glorious is to make atmosphere in which you live. So to improve your life every single day, what you didn't do well yesterday, do it well tomorrow. So that was already in her blood. And then these women came and they helped her to get back her, they motivated her, encouraged her, and brought her self-esteem, some of it back.
Yeah, and so she started blooming, and they gave her a platform to express herself, which obviously was threatening to Satyavan, but he went ahead and followed her dreams and gave it a try. And my hat's off to her for taking that leap. But it was so nice that she had her American friends to sort of be her as a support system. But I also noticed that as she was going through this journey with them and opening up to some of the Christian values or holidays or ideas that she was presented with as she started spreading her wings a little bit more, she was able to sort of find touch points in her own religion and the goddesses of her background, and somehow seemed to be able to find a kind of universality in her own spirituality by having her own background as a touch point, but opening up and finding links between her experiences and her myths and her metaphors and sort of representational imagery to give ideas to or give strength or gravitas to something that's a mere idea. So do you feel that that was an important aspect of her ability to start becoming more of herself?
Mm-hmm. She, knowing now who she is, she studied, she made sure what is this Thanksgiving all about? What is Halloween and what is Christmas and so on and so forth. And she studies those and gets to the root of those and realizes that her Kashmiri festivals and American festivals, which are so celebrated, are rooted in agricultural communities. For instance, there is a sowing time, there is the time of the harvest, which would be Thanksgiving, and then there are all these festivities related with it. So she combined Khetsamawas, for instance, with Halloween, when Bhairava, the terrible aspect of Shiva, comes and visits everyone and they keep food for him in Kashmir. And then Diwali for Christmas, and Navare is a Kashmiri, New Year. She combined with New Year in her, and then she showed, if you remember that chapter in the book, when she shows thal, plate which is laden with things, milk and sugar and rice and so on and so forth, which are symbolic of one thing or the other. So she incorporates the two traditions very well. She wants to live a life and make it beautiful again. So she tries her best to adjust her traditions with that of the American traditions, her adopted country. I also wanted to combine that universality you talked about with when she travels around the world, she's exposed to various cultures, various arts and religions, and she experiences meeting other women who are gracious to her. And she realizes that all these in Africa, in Asia, in China, in Japan, all these people, the idea of kindness and gratitude and all this at the core of all the religions is exactly the same. The compassion, love, kindness, generosity. As Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness. Not anything else, not Buddhism. So she also realizes that this is at the common core. This is what is important. That she transcends her limited self, I think. That helps her transcend.
Yeah, I think so too. And I noticed she did it a little bit with food too, because she almost treated food like an art, and she wanted to live in a beautiful world and be creative. And she started merging foods, as I recall, a little bit, and tried her best to be experimental within the sort of confines of how she was living her life as a mother and wife. And so that's a beautiful message.
I wanted to add her experience. It's almost the experience of rebirth at the temple of Kali Kapaleshwari in Chennai, that she is totally transformed, and then she traveling gives her a lot of time by herself to think about these things. And one of the reasons when she comes back home, she forgives Satyavan for everything, because she is not who she was before. This whole idea of spiritual, actually I had named this book, The Immigrant Wife, Kamal Ascending. Her Shanti's name, I had first Kamal. So I thought she ascends from first part to the second part to the third part eventually. So she gets transformed spiritually, whether she was religious or not, but now she becomes more of a spiritual person.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey that she took, and the forgiveness, you almost, it gives you a little bit of surprise. But wasn't it Gandhi who said, forgiveness is the ornament of the brave?
Yes.
She was a very brave woman, even though she she was demure, you know, she was very gentle, but she had a bravery to her essence too, that it's a nice combination of qualities that are unique to blend together. So I was very impressed with the character and the whole story, and I believe that the message is very important at this time when people are forgetting about kindness a little bit now and then, I think, at least in the public sphere, and it's a nice way to sort of steer people in the new year, and I hope it'll be a fresh one with some fresh influence. But I wanted to just kind of conclude on finding out about what you're working on now. Can you talk about what you're doing, what's coming up, and where people can find out more about your work?
Thanks for asking that. I am working, I'm almost done on a collection of short stories, my second collection of stories. And this is mostly about, sounds not very happy, but about death and suffering and small deaths we face in our life. And as Shanti's mother said to her, that it is not the way we live because we all, the way we die because we all die differently, but how we live. So in those stories, although I talk about a lot about death, but I say that unless we confront the fact that this is in our this is human destiny, that we all die, that is not the point. The point is how we live our lives. So that is a collection of stories, and I'm also writing the 365 days of journaling and meditation as a sort of a diary for keeping a journal. It'll have prompts and meditations about meditation and walking and journaling and so on.
Okay, and more of a guide for other writers? Okay.
Daily, it has daily sayings, if I can, daily posts, little small short pieces for every day, for reading every day. And I would love to hear from people, but not on messaging or Facebook, but on my website. They can write to me on my website. I can respond to them. So that is the way. My name, madhubazazwangu.com.
Okay. Okay. And so they can email you directly. They can contact you directly.
From here, they can contact me, yes.
Well, that is wonderful. And I'm sure you'll hear from quite a few readers. I really wish you the greatest success with this wonderful book.
Thank you so much, Jean.
Award-winning.
Meeting you.
It's a joy to read, and an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And I hope we can continue our conversation offline.
Yes.
As time goes on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to the IAAC for giving us this opportunity to chat.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much, Madhu. Thank you, Jean. It was a wonderful discussion. I stayed out of it more or less because I wanted to hear both of you.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off while you were
No.
comment. I was just trying to carry on a thought that you had expressed. Yeah.
Presenting IAAC there. And we at IAAC are trying to bring forth these kind of discussions and trying to bring to America what we have as Indians. What we are, what is our ethos, what are we made of. And it's an old civilization. It has gone through, because virtually every civilization goes through same things, same experiences. Mm-hmm. Good kings, bad kings, drought, bumper crop, good happiness, sadness, wars, peaceful time. Then each civilization selects what it thinks it is important for it. And that's how they live. So we have something to contribute to the rest of the world because we have to live like one world. Mm-hmm. So we at IAAC are trying to bring through films, through theater, through art, through dance, through books, to writers, those value system. Because we're trying to live in a world, we don't know what truth is, because it depends what is your perspective of truth. So these stories and these kind of things bring to you some values. I was very happy you brought that dream sequence. I am very impressed with that, and it brought in a lot of things in. It was very, very good. And you quoted T.S. Eliot, who is my favorite poet, Prufrock story in that, so love story of Prufrock. That was very, very good. So it's a beautiful book. It reads very well. It will be good for
Thank you so much.
audience.
I want to give my heartfelt thank you to you, Dr. Nirmal Mattu and Jean Nair. Thank you so much. It was one, and IAAC.
Hello, I'm Neeli Lakhani, IAAC Literary Festival Director. I want to thank you for joining our award-winning authors and their wondrous stories. IAAC is a 501c nonprofit. Programs like the one you just watched happen because of contributions from generous folks like you. Please donate to the IAAC so that we can support our artists and sustain our cultural programs. It is simple to donate by visiting the IAAC website at iaac.us. Learn about the insider benefits that membership gives you. On behalf of the entire IAAC board, stay safe and see you at our next event. Thank you.